Everyone, I know there's people mad at me because in the last video on Rise of the Ronin, I pointed out some visual clunk and things that I thought looked a poopy, because that's what I do. When I see things that look a poopy, I call them a poopy. So that's what I did. I mean, of course, like, it was visible. It's not like I have to defend it. Those problems were plainly visible to everybody. I'm hoping that they've made improvements, and they just dropped this, The Fight BTS, revealing some more information about the game. So I'm hoping they've made some strides, and maybe the game is looking even better than it was in that older footage. So let's see, because of course, if it looks better, then we can be, dare I say, hyped about the game. No, you should never be hyped, but we can at the very least then be more excited for it, because it will alleviate the concerns about performance issues. Let's see what they've got.
Little to do. As I sit and wait in this dreary cell, I watch the courtyard outside with great intrigue. Yesterday, I witnessed something quite special. A crow landed close to my window, attempting to grasp a piece of bread lodged just beyond its reach.
I told you guys the story about, I'm already pissing people off that I'm pausing it already, but I told you guys the story about my high school principal who tried to troll his friend in college. The bird flew into the window while he was eating breakfast and died. It just like cracked its neck flying into the window, thinking it'd fly inside. So he took the dead bird and put it in the box of his roommate's cereal. And so when his roommate poured out the cereal into the bowl, just a dead bird plopped out. That's some next level trolling. I never had roommates do anything that insane to me. But every time now I see people talk about birds, I'm quickly reminded just a little bit of that. It's pretty hardcore. Little psychopathic.
This determined creature tried time.
Why'd he do that? I don't know. I do not know. I wish I knew, but I don't know.
And time again, but its beak was too short and too thick. Eventually, the crow left in what I concluded was defeat. But to my amazement, the crow flew back with a stick in its feet. This cunning bird used the stick to dislodge the food and fly away with its prize. A small victory, but it reminded me of our struggle, and that we must adapt if our plan is to succeed. Some may shun the outsider's weapons and tactics, but we cannot be afraid to embrace them in pursuit of our goals. Spread the word to our allies. We must be like the crow.
I really thought they were about to. We must be like the Rise of the Ronin. We have to be the Death Stranding.
Action remains at the core of Rise of the Ronin. It is the culmination of our previous work on action games as Team Ninja.
Team Ninja's action is known for its high speed and difficulty. We feel it's part of the player's expectations as well.
There's the importance of action in gameplay, and the power of authenticity you get from a period drama story.
Let's fight!
Whilst I was visiting places such as Shokosunjuku or Meirin-gakusha, I realized how locals were truly dedicated to their studies at the time. There were plenty of academic manuals, including research on the Dutch and Occidental weaponry.
I love seeing that the devs go this in depth with like their research into weaponry and things. I find it so fascinating because I appreciate it. Like the game is not just, it's a sword, give him a sword and let him hit stuff. Like they actually go through the process of figuring out what it looks like, how like the exact dimensions, how you'd have to move with it, all those little details. I think it's super cool.
At a time when Japan was isolated and people couldn't access any information from the rest of the world, it was incredible to see the amount of foreign information, worldly cultures, and teachings they were studying. They then put this to good use in order to build Japan's future. I believe we managed to convey that in Rise of the Ronin as well.
Looking at the Bakumatsu era, there were many philosophers with different schools of thought. They can be split into pro and anti-shogunate ideologies. These ideologies fought and contrasted with each other. The goal was to look at how this fight would translate in the action, which weapons and fighting styles would be adopted, and first of all, why that fight was happening.
Ready yourselves!
We looked at each personality, along with the choice of weapon, and worked out how to make these battles authentic within Ronin.
The more we researched, the more we found. The Munen star and the Hokushinto star as well demonstrated how these people lived their life through the katana, how it was their weapon of choice.
It was here where we really felt the power of history.
From that period, as we moved towards the modern era, weaponry changed. For example, handguns were introduced. We had to think how to integrate them and balance the use of them with close combat, which meant we had to develop gameplay that incorporated both close combat and ranged attacks.
It's a baller move to just pull out a bayoneted rifle and use it as a pistol. Like, oh man, that's a ballsy move.
And was a
Those things are not light, by the way. I mean, if you've ever held up like an old, genuine rifle, we did it at like a tour of with a museum thing that we did. And of course, it wasn't like the kind of rifle I'm sure they're using in Japan during this period. But back when they made those things with real wood and like actual, I don't know if it was cast iron or steel or whatever they used for it at the time, but those things are freaking heavy. They are freaking heavy.
logical addition when we thought of developing new weapons for Ronin. It perfectly suits the Bakumatsu era. We dedicated time to working on adding new gimmicks in the fighting actions.
This game is completely original. As an action game, I believe that it wasn't necessary to make the game resemble a history textbook. It was about creating a reality that was totally plausible in Rise of the Ronin's universe. The team would either agree or disagree to several ideas each day to crystallize what was possible in this game's universe.
When it comes to action, first I look at something that is humanly possible. Actions you are able to achieve through exercise and training. This is the action that I wanted to make, rather than people just flying around.
Then they show him flying around. I'm sorry, is this thing that they just showed humanly possible? Like, I feel like they're trolling a little bit. It's like, yeah, we wanted to ground it in what can be realistically done, not just people flying around. And then he goes and shows somebody literally flying around. Like, he's flying and going around. Pole vaulting with like one hand from a standing start and no run up? Come on, dude. You're telling me a human being can do this? Somebody find me a clip right now. Find me a clip right now of somebody standing still and then just casually pivoting and with nothing but their delts shoving themselves 15 feet in the air. Like, it's cool. As a video game, that's awesome. I just find it funny that literally the moment after he finishes saying, we don't want people flying around, they show somebody flying around. It's just funny. It looks badass though. I think, again, like this game, the combat looks sick. And these guys, if you know the devs, they know how to make a compelling combat system. So I have no doubt that this is going to be great. My only concerns have been tied up in technical performance, because a lot of the stuff that have shown are like, there are some concerning little bits, especially when they go into cities and are like actively exploring. I think the glider looks really weird the more I see it. But the game could still be great. I still would predict it's probably like an 8 out of 10. It's probably a good game, but it's held back by some technical difficulties, which is also something the previous games have struggled with before.
I wanted to explore what is possible for humans to achieve after long years of dedicated training.
Blah. I need a game where every time they do something crazy and cool, they go brah, brah. That's what I need.
Tag along with me, will you?
Will you?
What we insisted on most whilst building Rise of the Ronin story was creating a bond system. We looked at the bond you create with other historical figures. Then they can either help you or become opponents.
Won't lay a finger on me!
Depending on the people you take with you, this will also affect the techniques you can use too. Having a certain character with you will bring something unique.
Bond bonuses. So fated intelligence points +1, style master, Rio master. Interesting. There's always a lot of depth.
It also allows for unexpected combinations that might prove to be worthwhile. You can switch between characters as well.
That's cool. See,
It
where's
was a
the
lot
brat?
of work to create the system, but it was definitely the right thing to do.
See, that's cool.
There is also the ability to read an enemy's moves to your advantage that is unique to this game. This is demonstrated through the counter-spark system. Actions used based on the opponent's moves. It needs to be used with precise timing. And you have to be able to predict your enemy's moves.
Isn't that just true of like any combat system with parries and stuff though? Right? Like,
a large part of the combat in Ronin is based around a wide variety of actions you can choose to combat your enemies. It was essential for us that the player gets positive feelings from the action, to feel the battles, and for the enemy actions to look cool. However, as we set the stage for the game and built its story, the period drama aspect was a strong element that we always kept in mind.
see, there's moments like that where I think the game looks pretty good. Like this shot, I think this shot looks pretty good. This is cool. Gliding in, the leaves floating in the air. I think this looks pretty good. So there's moments where I think it looks pretty good. There's other moments where it just kind of takes a nosedive in quality, which just makes me wonder, like, are there different builds that they're showing footage from? You know, like this shot looks very Wolong. Like this shot looks very outdated, but there are other shots that are super cool.
That we always kept in mind.
This nation is in your hands!
The cause. The cause. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if you play this game and you're like, it's great, but the poly counts on some of the rocks and stuff are low. If that's your takeaway, then you probably were never going to like the game. I do think it's fair to bring up, like, things that might affect your ability to be immersed or things that are significantly behind the curve. Like, if you have graphics that are a generation behind. I think that's fair to bring up and potentially ding in a review score. Because it's like, it's 2024. You should be able to push the boundary a little more if you're charging full price. If you're like a AA studio and, you know, it's a smaller team, lower budget, lower price tag, then I think players have some flexibility. But I think if you're going to charge full price, then the expectation is that you're going to bring full price quality in every regard. And, you know, even the people that I've seen that are really, really hyped for this game, even they're saying like, yeah, I mean, it's not a looker, but that's not why you buy these games and play them. And I think that's totally fair. It's not why you buy and play these games. But I also think that you should be able to bring it up and address it without being labeled a hater, because it is jarring at times. You know, to see a shot like this in a $70 game. But I love to see that they're doing their research historically into the weaponry. That's super cool. You know, it seems very intentional. You know, it's not trying to be realistic, but they're trying to at least do their homework and be respectful to the source material, which I think is the distinction. But I mean, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, there's apparently 4-player co-op, so you can play through the story with friends. You can do that. There's a good amount of stuff, so that's cool. Never go for the prettiest woman. Get you one with good mechanics. Yeah, I mean, with this, if the core mechanics are fun, that's all you really need to worry about. Sometimes graphical presentation and things like that are worth bringing up. Like Wolong, I reviewed Wolong and I thought it was fine. I don't recall exactly what I said through my whole review, but my memory of it is that it was fine. There were parts I really, really liked about it. And then there were other parts that I thought were like particularly rough around the edges. There were a lot of issues with like, I think I had problems with, was it crash? I don't know. I just remember having some technical issues. And I also thought that there were, some parts of the area or parts of the game that felt extremely unpolished visually, kind of like that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth thing, where there's like rocks that feel like they're straight PS2 era, but then they're right next to rocks that are super modern. So it just felt like it wasn't super polished. Yeah, you said one of the levels looked like a burnt chicken nugget. I do remember that, and I stand by that. That whole level looked like a burnt chicken nugget. I do agree with that. So I stand by that. I do think also though, like some of this footage of like Neo 2, I look back at this and Neo was not just a fun game. I felt like it was also, at least at the time, I felt like it was a looker. But even looking back at this, the fact that it's only 3 years ago, like it definitely was a PS4 game for sure. Definitely. Even then, like if you told me this was a PS3 game, I probably would have believed you. So their games have always been pretty much a generation behind visually, but the gameplay's so good it doesn't really matter. The great thing about From Software is usually they can, Elden Ring kind of be an exception because it's cross-gen, but usually they push the boundary graphically. Their games look really, really good. But with this, it's just, it's stuck out to me. He took my thing.